Hey, old man. Where do you think you're going with that?
Just buying crayons for my granddaughter, sir.
Buying? You? Don't make me laugh. People like you don't buy things. You steal them.
I have money right here. I can...
Shut your mouth! You stink up this store just standing here.
Sir, please. There's no need.
Get on the ground.
A knee slammed into the old man's back. His cheek hit the cold tile. A box of crayons skidded across the polished floor. The guard stood over him, chest puffed, grinning like he had caught a dangerous criminal. He had no idea he just tackled someone who carried a federal badge for 30 years, and who knew exactly which camera was recording every second. 3 hours before his face met that tile floor, Benjamin Fletcher stood in front of his bathroom mirror, adjusting the collar of his black jacket. It was the same jacket he had worn for 15 years. The leather along the cuffs had softened to a pale gray. The zipper caught if you pulled it too fast, but it still fit the way it always had, square across the shoulders, snug at the waist. The kind of fit that came from decades of standing straight. He was 68 years old. His hair had gone white at the temples and thin across the top. His knees ached when it rained. His hands, wide, scarred across the knuckles, the skin rough from years of work that had nothing to do with office desks, moved slowly now. But they moved with purpose. Benjamin Fletcher had retired 4 years ago from the United States Marshal Service. 30 years. Deputy Marshal. Fugitive Task Force. He had kicked down doors in El Paso, tracked fugitives through the Louisiana Bayou, and once spent 11 days in a Juarez safe house waiting for an extraction that almost never came. The scars on his hands were not decorative. But today was not about any of that. Today was about Lily. His granddaughter turned 9 tomorrow. She liked 2 things more than anything in the world: drawing and the color purple. Benjamin had promised her a new set of crayons and a sketchbook. The fancy kind, she had said. The ones with the sharpener built into the box. He pulled on his gray trousers, checked his wallet, 320s, a 10, and his retired Marshal ID tucked behind his driver's license, and headed out. Morrison's department store sat on the corner of 5th and Callaway. 3 floors of polished marble, soft jazz through ceiling speakers, and the kind of lighting that made everything look expensive. The parking lot was full of SUVs and sedans that cost more than Benjamin's annual pension. He walked through the automatic doors at 2:14 p.m. No one greeted him. The woman at the fragrance counter glanced up, then looked away. A mother pulled her child slightly closer as he passed. Small gestures, familiar ones. Benjamin had learned to read rooms before he learned to read Miranda rights. He noticed everything. He said nothing. He found the art supply section on the 2nd floor. Rows of colored pencils, watercolor sets, sketchbooks with smooth cream pages. He picked up a 64-piece crayon set, the one with the built-in sharpener, and a spiral-bound sketchbook with a lavender cover. Lily would love it. He tucked both items under his arm and headed for the escalator. That was when Derek Hadley first saw him. Derek was 34. Broad-shouldered, thick-necked, with a jaw that looked like it had been set in concrete. He wore the store's dark navy security uniform, pressed crisp, sleeves rolled once above the wrist to show off his forearms. His badge sat high on his chest, polished to a mirror shine every morning before his shift. He walked the floors like he owned them. Derek had been a security guard at Morrison's for 3 years. In that time, he had filed more incident reports than any other guard on staff. His supervisor, a quiet man named Craig, had told him twice to ease up. Derek had ignored him both times. He had a habit. Everyone who worked the floor knew it, though no one said it out loud. When a black customer walked in, Derek followed. He stood at the end of aisles, arms crossed, watching. He positioned himself between the customer and the exit. He called it instinct. Craig called it something else. Today, Derek saw an old black man in a worn black jacket carrying merchandise without a bag. No receipt visible. Moving toward the escalator. Derek uncrossed his arms and started walking, 12 feet behind. Then 8. Then 5. Benjamin felt the footsteps before he heard them. 30 years of field work had trained his peripheral awareness to a razor edge. He knew someone was tailing him. He knew the distance. He knew the pace. He did not turn around. He simply continued toward the register, the crayon box tucked under his left arm, his right hand hanging loose at his side, the way it always had, out of habit, even though he had not carried a sidearm in 4 years. Benjamin stepped off the escalator on the first floor and turned left toward the registers. Derek cut him off at the end of aisle 9. He did not ask a question. He did not introduce himself. He planted himself in the middle of the aisle, legs apart, arms folded across his dark navy uniform, and looked Benjamin up and down the way a man looks at something stuck to the bottom of his shoe. "Where'd you get those?" Benjamin stopped. He held up the crayon box and the sketchbook. "From the second floor. Art supplies. I'm heading to the register now." "Sure you are." Derek took a step closer. His badge caught the overhead light. His name was printed in white block letters across a black strip on his chest. Hadley. "You know what I think? I think you grabbed those and you were heading straight for the door." "No, sir. I'm buying them. For my granddaughter." "Your granddaughter." Derek repeated it slowly, like the words tasted wrong. He tilted his head and snorted. "Right, and I'm the Queen of England. You walked past 2 registers on the second floor. Why didn't you pay up there?" "There was a line. I thought I'd try down here." "A line?" Derek smiled. It was not a kind smile. "That's a new one. I've heard every excuse in the book, old man. You people always have one ready." The words, "you people," hung in the air like smoke. Benjamin did not flinch. "I'd prefer to speak with a manager, please." "I am the authority on this floor. Empty your pockets." "You don't have that right, son." Something shifted behind Derek's eyes. The word son landed on him like a slap. His neck flushed red above the dark navy collar. He unfolded his arms and took another step forward, close enough now that Benjamin could smell the cheap aftershave and the energy drink on his breath. "What did you just call me?" "I called you son, because you're young enough to be mine, and you're about to make a mistake that's going to follow you for a very long time." Derek grabbed the front of Benjamin's black jacket with both hands and shoved him backward. Benjamin's shoulders hit the end cap display. A pyramid of glass candle holders rattled. 2 fell and shattered on the floor. The sound cracked through the quiet store like a gunshot. "You think you can talk to me like that?" Derek's voice had gone loud now, loud enough for the whole floor to hear. "You come in here looking like you just crawled out of a shelter. You steal merchandise, and then you lecture me? In my store?" "I haven't stolen anything." "Then why are you sweating?" Benjamin was not sweating, but it did not matter what he said. Derek had already written the story in his head, and Benjamin was the villain in every chapter. A small crowd had gathered at both ends of the aisle. A teenager held up his phone, recording vertically. A woman in a red coat watched with her hand over her mouth. 2 men in business suits stood near the cologne section, watching with their arms crossed, making no move to help. An older white man in a golf shirt shook his head slowly, but said nothing. A young mother steered her stroller in the opposite direction. No one intervened. Not one person. Derek keyed his radio. Tony, aisle 9. I need backup. Got a shoplifter resisting. Benjamin heard the word resisting, and something cold settled in his chest. Not fear, recognition. He had heard that word weaponized 1,000 times in his career. In courtrooms, in depositions, in internal affairs files. It was the word people attached to a situation after the fact to justify whatever violence came next. I'm not resisting, Benjamin said calmly. I'm standing completely still. Your cameras will confirm that. Yeah, and I'm sure your lawyer will love hearing about it, Derek laughed. Oh, wait, you probably can't afford one. A few people in the crowd chuckled. The teenagers zoomed in. Derek turned to the growing audience and raised his voice, performing now. Everyone stay back. This individual is being detained for theft. For your safety, please keep your distance. I have not stolen anything. Benjamin held up the crayon box. 64 crayons, $14.99. The money is in my pocket. I can pay right now. You should have thought about that before you tried to walk out. I was walking toward the register. You stopped me before I could get there. That's not what I saw. A woman near the back of the crowd spoke up. He was walking toward the register. I saw him. Derek turned sharply. Ma'am, please stay out of this. This is a security matter. The woman fell silent. The crowd tightened. More phones appeared. Tony Marsh arrived from the stockroom. He was younger than Derek, 26, slim, nervous energy in his hands. He took in the scene. An old black man in a black jacket holding a box of crayons pressed against a display case. Glass on the floor. Derek red-faced and breathing hard. Tony hesitated. Derek, what's going on here? Shoplifter. Resisting. Help me get him on the ground.
Tony looked at Benjamin. Benjamin looked back. There was no fear in the old man's eyes, only a steady, measuring calm that made Tony deeply uncomfortable for reasons he could not name. It was the look of a man who had seen worse. Much worse. Derek, maybe we should just call the manager and let her...
I gave you an order, Tony. Get him on the ground. Now.
Tony swallowed. He did not move.
Derek did not wait. He hooked his foot behind Benjamin's ankle and swept his leg forward. Benjamin went down hard. His left hip hit the tile first, then his shoulder, then the side of his head. The crayon box burst open on impact. 64 crayons scattered across the white marble floor. Red, blue, yellow, purple, spinning and rolling in every direction like broken confetti at a parade no one was celebrating. Derek dropped his full weight, knee first, onto Benjamin's lower back. The old man's face pressed flat against the cold tile. His black jacket rode up, exposing the white undershirt beneath. His gray trousers tore at the right knee. Stay down. Don't you dare move. Benjamin did not move. He breathed. Slow. Steady. He counted the ceiling tiles above him. 1, 2, 3. A habit from stakeouts, from long hours in surveillance vans, from the kind of operational patience most people never had to learn and never wanted to. The teenager with the phone moved closer, angling for a better shot. Yo, this is crazy, he muttered. The woman in the red coat pulled out her own phone. A man near the register started a second live stream. Within 30 seconds, a young woman named Natalie Cole, 23, media studies graduate, 3,000 followers, had started her own broadcast. She captioned it, "Store guard takes down elderly shoplifter at Morrison's." Within 2 minutes, 400 people were watching live. Comments started flooding in. Get him! Why do they always steal? Old man shouldn't have done it. A few dissenting voices appeared. He didn't do anything. This is wrong. They were quickly drowned out. Benjamin lay on the cold tile and watched the red recording light of the security camera above aisle 9 blink once every 3 seconds. He had installed cameras like that one. He had reviewed footage from cameras exactly like that one. He had built cases that sent men to federal prison based on cameras exactly like that one. He knew what that camera was recording right now. Derek Hadley's knee on the back of a 68-year-old man. 64 crayons scattered on a white marble floor. And a retired deputy United States Marshal who had not raised a hand, not raised his voice, not done a single thing except try to buy a birthday present for a 9-year-old girl who liked the color purple. Sandra Wells, the floor manager, arrived at a half run. She was 41, blonde, perpetually anxious, and had held the position for less than 6 months. She was not prepared for this. "What happened?" she asked, slightly out of breath. "Caught him stealing," Derek said without looking up. "Classic grab and go. Resisted when I confronted him." Sandra looked at the floor. Crayons everywhere. A torn sketchbook with a lavender cover. Glass shards from the candle display. And an elderly man lying face down with a security guard's knee grinding into his spine. "Derek, is this really necessary? He's elderly, He's a thief, Sandra. I caught him. Now do your job and call the police." Sandra looked at Benjamin. He turned his head just enough to meet her eyes. He did not plead. He did not beg. He simply said, very quietly, "Ma'am, I'm 68 years old. I came here to buy crayons. My wallet is in my right pocket. There's a receipt from the coffee shop next door with today's date on it, which proves I arrived 20 minutes ago. Not long enough to plan a robbery. All I'm asking is that you look." Sandra opened her mouth, then closed it. She looked at Derek's knee on Benjamin's back. She looked at the crowd. She looked at the phones. She counted at least 7 recording. She did not ask Derek to let him up. She pulled out her own phone and called the police. Officer Rita Dawson arrived at Morrison's at 2:47 p.m. She was 39, 11 years on the force, and had handled enough shoplifting calls to know what most of them looked like. This did not look like most of them. She walked through the automatic doors and saw the crowd first. 30, maybe 40 people clustered near aisle 9. Phones out, murmuring. The energy in the room was wrong. It felt less like a retail incident and more like the last 5 seconds before a fight breaks out in a parking lot. Then she saw the floor. Crayons. Dozens of them, scattered across white marble in every direction. A torn sketchbook with a lavender cover. Broken glass from a display. And at the center of it all, an elderly black man lying face down on the tile with a security guard's knee on his back. Rita's jaw tightened. She keyed her body camera on. "Sir," she said to Derek, "step back, please. I'll take it from here." Derek stood up slowly, reluctantly, like a dog being pulled off a bone. He straightened his dark navy uniform and puffed his chest. "Officer, I caught this man attempting to shoplift. He resisted when I tried to detain him. You can see the evidence right there." He pointed at the crayons on the floor as if they were narcotics. Rita looked at the crayons. She looked at Benjamin, who was slowly pushing himself up from the tile. His black jacket was dusty. His gray trousers were torn at the knee. A small red mark bloomed on his left cheekbone where his face had met the floor. He stood up with the kind of deliberate slowness that comes not from weakness, but from control. He brushed the dust from his sleeves. He straightened his collar. Then he looked at Rita and waited. "Sir, can you tell me what happened?" Rita asked. "I came in to buy crayons for my granddaughter's birthday." I picked up a box and a sketchbook on the second floor. I was walking to the register on the first floor when this gentleman stopped me, accused me of stealing, and put me on the ground. "He's lying," Derek said immediately. "He was heading for the exit." "I was heading for Register 3, Benjamin pointed, "which is in the opposite direction of the exit. Your cameras will show that." Rita wrote in her notepad. She looked at Derek. "Did you see him conceal any merchandise?" "He had the items under his arm." "Under his arm, not in his pockets, not in his jacket, under his arm, while walking toward the registers." Derek's confidence flickered for the first time. He was acting suspicious. "How so?" He was looking around, nervous. "He was browsing in a store." Rita said it flatly, not a question. Derek said nothing. Rita turned back to Benjamin. "Sir, do you have identification?" Benjamin reached into his right pocket, slowly, deliberately, keeping his hands visible, the way he had trained hundreds of officers to handle exactly this kind of situation, and pulled out his wallet. He handed Rita his driver's license. She glanced at it. Benjamin H. Fletcher, 68 years old, local address. "Thank you, Mr. Fletcher. You mentioned you wanted to make a phone call earlier." "I did." "Go ahead." Benjamin took out a phone. Not a smartphone, an old flip phone with scratched silver casing. He opened it, scrolled through a short contacts list, and pressed call. The crowd was still watching. Derek stood with his arms crossed, smirking. Sandra hovered near the jewelry counter, biting her thumbnail. Benjamin spoke into the phone. His voice was calm, low, almost casual. The voice of a man placing a dinner reservation, not a man who had just been thrown to the ground in public. "James, it's Ben. I need you at Morrison's on 5th. Bring the file." A pause. "No, I'm fine. Just a scratch. Worse things happened in the field." Another pause. 20 minutes? That's fine. I'm not going anywhere." He closed the phone and slid it back into his pocket. Derek snorted. "Calling your lawyer? Good luck with that. Hope he takes payment plans." A few people in the crowd laughed. Someone commented on Natalie's live stream. "Imagine being that old and still stealing, LMAO." Benjamin said nothing. He walked to the small bench near the fitting rooms and sat down. His back was straight. His hands rested on his thighs, palms down. His feet were flat on the floor, shoulder-width apart. It was not the posture of a man waiting for help. It was the posture of a man who had sat in federal briefing rooms, in courthouses, in armored vehicles. A man who understood that patience was not passive. Patience was a weapon. Rita watched him sit. Something about the way he carried himself, the economy of movement, the stillness, the way his eyes tracked everything without his head turning, registered somewhere in the back of her mind. She had seen that bearing before. She had seen it in federal agents, in military officers, in men who had spent careers making life or death decisions under pressure. She said nothing, but she kept her body camera running. 23 minutes passed. Natalie's live stream hit 2,000 viewers. Derek leaned against the wall, checking his phone, confident this was just another Tuesday. Then a black SUV pulled into the fire lane in front of Morrison's. 2 doors opened at the same time. The first man out of the SUV was James Whitaker. He was 55, tall, silver at the temples, wearing a charcoal gray suit that fit like it had been tailored that morning. He moved with the kind of quiet authority that did not need to announce itself. His stride was long and unhurried. Clipped to his belt, visible beneath the open jacket, was a gold badge, United States Marshal's Service. The second person was Patricia Graves. Mid-40s, dark hair pulled into a tight bun, charcoal blazer, black leather briefcase in her left hand. She walked half a step behind James, not because she was subordinate, but because she was already scanning the room, cataloging faces, counting phones, assessing the legal landscape before she had taken her third step through the door. The automatic doors parted, and the temperature inside Morrison's shifted. Not physically, but every person in that store felt something change. The murmuring stopped. The phones stayed up, but the hands holding them went still. Derek, who had been leaning against the wall scrolling through his phone, looked up. James walked past the crowd without acknowledging them. His eyes locked onto Benjamin sitting on the bench. He crossed the floor in 8 strides. "Ben," he extended his hand. "You all right?" Benjamin took it and stood. "I'm fine, James. Just a long afternoon." James looked at the red mark on Benjamin's cheekbone. He looked at the torn knee of his gray trousers. He looked at the 64 crayons still scattered across the marble floor, and the crushed lavender sketchbook that no one had bothered to pick up. His jaw tightened. He turned around slowly. "Which one?" Benjamin did not point. He did not need to. Derek was the only man in a dark navy uniform standing near the scene with a badge on his chest and guilt beginning to pool in the corners of his eyes. James walked toward him. Patricia followed. Derek straightened up. He pushed off the wall and squared his shoulders. A reflex, the way a smaller dog puffs up when a larger one enters the yard. "Can I help you?" Derek said. His voice cracked on the second word. James did not answer immediately. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a leather credential case. He opened it and held it at Derek's eye level. The gold star gleamed under the fluorescent lights. "Deputy United States Marshal James Whitaker." His voice was not loud. It did not need to be. "And the man whose face you just put on that floor is retired Deputy Marshal Benjamin Fletcher. 30 years of federal service, Fugitive Task Force, Meritorious Service Award, 3 commendations from the Attorney General of the United States." The store went silent. Not quiet, silent. The kind of silence that happens when 40 people stop breathing at the same time. Derek stared at the badge. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. James was not finished. Mr. Fletcher led the Fugitive Apprehension Unit out of the Eastern District for 11 years. He has personally arrested more dangerous criminals than you will ever meet in your lifetime. He trained federal agents. He consulted on security protocols for retail chains across the Southeast. James paused. "Including this one." Sandra Wells, standing 6 feet away, made a small sound, half gasp, half whisper. Her hand went to her mouth. "Including Morrison's?" she said. Morrison's hired the Marshal Service in 2014 to redesign their loss prevention training program. Benjamin Fletcher led that project. The protocol your guards are supposed to follow, the one about approaching customers, about de-escalation, about never using physical force without confirmed evidence of theft. He wrote it. Derek's face had gone from red to white. Not pale, white. The color of paper. The color of a man watching the floor open beneath him. Patricia Graves stepped forward. She placed a business card on the nearest counter. "Patricia Graves, attorney at law. I represent Mr. Fletcher." Her voice was crisp, clinical, the kind of voice that made people reach for their own lawyers. "We will be requesting all security footage from today, all incident reports filed by Mr. Hadley in the past 12 months, and the personnel files of every security employee on duty this afternoon." She looked directly at Sandra. "Your corporate counsel will want to call me before the end of business today. I would strongly suggest they do. Sandra nodded rapidly. She could not speak. Officer Rita Dawson had been standing 3 feet away, watching everything. She closed her notepad. She looked at Derek, then at James, then at Benjamin. The bearing she had noticed earlier, the stillness, the economy of movement, the tracking eyes, clicked into place like a tumbler falling in a lock. She had been right. She had known. She turned to Derek. Mr. Hadley, based on what I've observed today, I'll be including in my report that the use of force was disproportionate and that there was no evidence of theft at any point during this incident. Derek's hands hung at his sides. His dark navy sleeves, the ones he rolled up every morning to look intimidating, now looked like costume pieces. The badge he polished every day before his shift suddenly looked like tin. I was just doing my job, he said. His voice was small. Benjamin Fletcher stood in the middle of Morrison's department store, black jacket dusty, gray trousers torn, a red mark on his 68-year-old face, and looked at Derek Hadley with an expression that was not anger. It was something worse than anger. It was recognition. I spent 30 years catching people who actually broke the law, Benjamin said quietly. Fugitives, murderers, men who would have killed me if I gave them the chance. And in 30 years, I never once put my knee on an innocent man's back. He paused. You couldn't tell the difference between a criminal and a grandfather buying crayons. Natalie Cole's live stream had exploded. 8,000 viewers now. The comments had reversed completely. He's a federal marshal? Oh my God! That guard is done. Someone get this man his crayons. The share count was climbing every second. Derek stood motionless. His mouth was still open. His hands were shaking. The dark navy uniform that had made him feel powerful 3 hours ago now felt like a straitjacket he could not unzip. James put his hand on Benjamin's shoulder. Let's get you out of here, Ben. Benjamin shook his head. Not yet. He bent down slowly, knees aching, back sore from the knee that had been grinding into it, and picked up a single crayon from the floor. It was purple. He held it up and looked at it for a long moment. Then he placed it in his jacket pocket and said, I still need to buy my granddaughter her birthday present. The call from Morrison's corporate headquarters came at 6:14 p.m. that same evening. Howard Grant, Vice President of Operations, was on a flight from Chicago to Atlanta when his phone lit up with 14 missed calls, 9 emails, and a text from the CEO that read, Land, call me, now. He landed. He called. The CEO spoke for 4 minutes without pausing. Howard booked a rental car before his luggage hit the carousel. By the time Howard walked through the front doors of the Morrisons on 5th and Callaway at 9:30 the next morning, the Natalie Cole live stream had been viewed 1.2 million times. It had been clipped, reposted, and reshared across every platform. Screenshots of Derek Hadley's face, mid-grin, knee on Benjamin's back, were circulating with captions that would follow him for the rest of his life. Howard was 53, gray-haired, thin-lipped, and had spent 22 years in corporate retail. He had handled lawsuits, PR crises, and product recalls. But he had never walked into a store where the security guard had tackled the man who designed the security program. He sat up in the conference room on the 3rd floor. With him were Morrison's head of legal, a woman named Ellen Shaw, the regional HR director, a district operations manager, and a forensic IT specialist who had been brought in overnight to pull every second of security footage from the past 6 months. They started with the footage from yesterday. The cameras told a story that was worse than Howard had expected. Much worse. Camera 4, 2nd floor, 2:16 p.m. Benjamin Fletcher walks through the art supply section. He browses for 3 minutes. He compares 2 crayon boxes, reads the labels, puts one back. He picks up the 64-piece set. He picks up a sketchbook with a lavender cover. He tucks both items under his left arm, in plain view, not concealed, and walks toward the escalator. His right hand hangs loosely at his side. His pace is unhurried. He does not glance toward exits. He does not look around nervously. He moves like a man who has done nothing wrong. Because he has done nothing wrong. Camera 7, first floor, 2:21 p.m. Benjamin steps off the escalator and turns left, toward register 3, not toward the exit. The exit is to the right, 40 feet in the opposite direction. Benjamin turns left. This fact is not ambiguous. It is not open to interpretation. It is geometry. Camera 7 continued. 2:22 p.m. Derek Hadley appears from the right side of the frame. He has been following Benjamin since the second floor. Camera 3 captured him entering the stairwell 15 seconds after Benjamin stepped onto the escalator. Derek walks directly into Benjamin's path and stops, arms crossed, legs apart, blocking the aisle. His body language is not the posture of inquiry. It is the posture of confrontation. Camera 9, aisle 9, 2:22 p.m. through 2:41 p.m. The full confrontation. 19 minutes of footage. Derek grabbing Benjamin's jacket. Benjamin's shoulders hitting the display case. Glass candle holders falling and shattering. Derek sweeping Benjamin's leg. The old man going down, hip, shoulder, head. Derek's knee driving into his lower back. 64 crayons exploding across the white marble floor. Benjamin's face pressed flat against the tile, his mouth moving, speaking calmly, while Derek's jaw clenches above him. At no point, not one single frame out of 34,000, did Benjamin Fletcher attempt to leave the store, conceal merchandise, resist physical contact, or behave in any manner consistent with shoplifting. Howard paused the footage. He removed his glasses, pressed his fingers into his closed eyes, and exhaled through his nose. "Pull his full history," he said quietly. "Every incident report Hadley has filed since day one." The IT specialist had already prepared it. He turned his laptop around and let the numbers speak. In 3 years at Morrison's, Derek Hadley had filed 41 incident reports. 34 of them, 83%, involved black customers. Of those 34, exactly 0 had resulted in confirmed theft. Not one. Not a single case. He had stopped a black teenager for suspicious browsing. The teenager was shopping for his mother's birthday present. He had detained a black woman for concealing merchandise in her purse. She was putting her own wallet back in her bag after paying at a different register. He had confronted a black man in a suit for loitering near high-value merchandise. The man was a district attorney, browsing watches during his lunch break. He had followed a black couple through the furniture section for 11 minutes, never approaching, just standing at the end of each aisle with his arms crossed, until they left the store without buying anything. They never came back. 7 of the remaining incident reports involved Hispanic customers. 0 confirmed thefts. The final 0 involved white customers. Derek had never once stopped a white shopper. Howard stared at the spreadsheet. 41 reports. 41 zeros in the confirmed theft column. A perfect record of being perfectly wrong every single time. "How did no one catch this?" Howard asked. The HR director shifted in her chair. "His reports were filed correctly. Proper format, proper language. They looked routine on paper." Routine. Howard repeated the word like it burned his tongue. 34 black customers detained or confronted in 3 years. 0 thefts. And it looked routine. Nobody answered. "Get Hadley in here." Derek arrived at 11 a.m. He had not slept. His eyes were red-rimmed and swollen. His dark navy uniform was wrinkled for the first time anyone could remember. The collar crooked, one sleeve unrolled, the crease in his trousers gone. The badge he polished every morning before his shift looked dull under the conference room lights. He sat down in the chair across from Howard, like a man lowering himself into water he knew was too cold. Howard did not offer pleasantries. "Mr. Hadley, I've reviewed the security footage from yesterday. Every camera, every angle, every second. I've also reviewed your complete incident history, all 41 reports over 3 years." Derek's left leg started bouncing under the table. His hands gripped the armrests. "The footage shows Mr. Fletcher walking toward Register 3, away from the exit, when you intercepted him. He carried merchandise openly under his arm. He made no attempt to conceal anything. He did not resist. He requested a manager. You refused. You initiated physical contact. You used force to bring a 68-year-old man to the ground and placed your knee on his back for over 3 minutes. He was acting suspicious. I'm not finished." Howard's voice did not rise. It dropped half an octave, which was worse. "Of your 41 incident reports, 34 targeted black customers. 0 confirmed thefts. You never stopped a white customer. Not once in 3 years. You have been using your position in this store to systematically profile and harass black shoppers, and the system that should have caught you failed." Howard paused. He let the silence do its work. "Yesterday, that system broke a 68-year-old man's fall on a marble floor. And that man, the one you called a thief, the one whose face you pressed into our tile, is retired Deputy United States Marshal Benjamin Fletcher. 30 years of federal service, fugitive task force, 3 commendations from the Attorney General." Howard leaned forward. "And he is the man who wrote the security protocol you were trained on. The de-escalation procedures, the rules about confirmed evidence before physical contact, the guidelines about approaching customers with respect. He wrote every single page, and you violated every single one." Derek's breathing had gone shallow. His face was the color of wet cement. "I was just doing my job," he whispered. "No, you were doing what you wanted to do. There's a difference." Ellen Shaw slid the termination document across the table. Derek's name was printed at the top in black letters. Below it, termination for cause, gross misconduct, violation of company policy, pattern of racial discrimination. "Your employment is terminated effective immediately," Ellen said. "You are permanently barred from all Morrison's locations. Additionally, Mr. Fletcher's attorney has indicated her intent to file a civil rights complaint and a personal injury claim. You will be named individually as a defendant." Derek picked up the pen. His hand shook so badly the signature was barely legible. A drop of sweat fell from his forehead onto the paper, smearing the first letter of his last name. He stood. He did not look at anyone. He walked to the door, stopped, and turned back. Does Mr. Fletcher know I'm the one who—" "Who what?" Howard asked. Derek couldn't finish the sentence. He left. Downstairs, 2 other meetings were happening simultaneously. Craig, the security guard who had warned Derek to leave Benjamin alone, was called in by the district operations manager. He walked out 30 minutes later with a promotion to lead security officer and a written mandate to rebuild the entire floor security team from the ground up. Tony Marsh sat in a smaller office with the HR director. He was suspended for 3 months without pay, not for what he did, but for what he did not do. He had the authority and the opportunity to stop Derek. He hesitated. In security work, hesitation is not neutral. It is a choice. Tony accepted the suspension without protest. "I should have stopped him," he said quietly. "I saw the old man's face. I knew it was wrong. I just didn't say it loud enough." While Morrison's conducted its internal reckoning, the outside world was conducting its own. Natalie Cole's video crossed 4.7 million views by noon on the second day. Hashtag Justice for Benjamin began trending nationally at 2 p.m. By evening, it had been used over 300,000 times. 3 former Morrison's customers, all black, contacted Patricia Graves's office within 48 hours. Each had a story about Derek Hadley. Gloria Sims, 51, described being followed through the women's clothing section for 20 minutes while shopping for her daughter's prom dress. She said Derek stood at the end of every aisle she entered, arms crossed, watching. Her daughter asked to leave. They never returned. Walter Briggs, 44, said Derek demanded to search his shopping bag in the electronics section, in front of his 2 children, ages 7 and 10. His son asked afterward, "Dad, did you steal something?" Walter said he couldn't answer. Keisha Adams, 20, a college sophomore, said Derek called her suspicious for trying on sunglasses at the accessories counter and told her, "Those are for paying customers." She had a debit card in her hand at the time. None of them had filed complaints when it happened. They had all assumed nothing would change. Now something was changing. Patricia Graves added their statements to the case file. It was getting thick. Local news ran the story on day 3. The headline, "Retired Federal Marshal Tackled by Store Guard While Buying Crayons." The subheadline, "Investigation Reveals 3-Year Pattern of Racial Profiling at Major Retailer." By day 4, 2 national civil rights organizations had offered pro bono support. A city councilwoman called for a public hearing on retail security practices. Morrison's stock dropped 1.4% in a single trading session, the equivalent of $83 million in market value, erased by one guard's knee on one grandfather's back. And in a quiet house on Birch Street, Benjamin Fletcher sat at his kitchen table with a cup of black coffee and the morning paper. He read the headline. He folded the paper, set it aside, and opened the crayon box he had finally purchased. The same 64-piece set from the same store, paid for at Register 3. The register he had been walking toward the entire time. He pulled out the purple crayon, set it on top of a birthday card for Lily, and wrote in careful block letters, "For my favorite artist. Love, Grandpa Ben." The civil rights complaint was filed on a Tuesday. The personal injury claim followed on Thursday. By the end of the second week, Morrison's was facing the kind of legal exposure that makes corporate boards cancel golf trips and hire crisis consultants. Patricia Graves did not rush. She built the case the way Benjamin had taught her cases should be built. Methodically, with evidence layered so tightly that no gap existed for a defense attorney to slip through. The security footage, the 41 incident reports, the 3 witness statements from Gloria, Walter, and Keisha, Officer Rita Dawson's body camera recording, and her written report, which stated in clear, unambiguous language that at no point did Mr. Fletcher exhibit behavior consistent with theft, and the force used by store security was disproportionate, unwarranted, and initiated without probable cause. Natalie Cole's live stream footage, now viewed over 12 million times, was entered as supplementary evidence. The comments section, hundreds of thousands of them, was cataloged and time-stamped, documenting the public's real-time reaction to watching an elderly man get thrown to the ground for holding a box of crayons. Morrison's corporate legal team requested a settlement meeting within 3 weeks. They did not want a trial. A trial meant cameras. Cameras meant more footage of Derek Hadley's knee on Benjamin Fletcher's back playing on every news channel in the country. They had seen enough footage. The settlement was reached on a Wednesday afternoon in a conference room that smelled like old coffee and new fear. The terms were not made fully public, but key provisions were disclosed as part of the agreement. Morrison's issued a formal, public apology, not from a spokesperson, not from a press release template, but from the CEO himself, on camera, using Benjamin Fletcher's full name and title. "We failed, Mr. Fletcher. We failed our values, and we failed the community we claim to serve." The company committed to a complete overhaul of its security hiring and training process nationwide. Every loss prevention employee across all 114 Morrison's locations would undergo mandatory anti-bias training, developed in consultation with civil rights organizations and, at Benjamin's specific request, reviewed by active and retired federal law enforcement professionals. A scholarship fund was established in Benjamin Fletcher's name, providing annual grants to students in the local community pursuing careers in law enforcement, criminal justice, and civil rights law. The initial endowment was substantial. Morrison's did not disclose the number. Patricia Graves smiled when she saw it. Derek Hadley was named individually in the civil rights complaint. Without Morrison's legal team to shield him, he retained a public defender. The complaint was eventually settled out of court for an undisclosed amount that, according to sources close to the case, would take Derek the better part of a decade to pay off. He was also permanently barred from employment in any security or law enforcement capacity in the state. The certification board revoked his guard license within 72 hours of the complaint being filed. His name was entered into a professional misconduct registry that would follow every job application he submitted for the rest of his career. Derek Hadley had wanted authority. He had wanted the power that came with the badge, the uniform, the right to tell people where to stand and when to move. He had wanted to be feared. Now he was known. That was worse. Tony Marsh completed his 3-month suspension and returned to Morrison's under Craig's supervision. On his first day back, Craig handed him a laminated card, a pocket-sized version of the security protocol that Benjamin Fletcher had written years ago. Tony read it on his lunch break. He read it again on the drive home. He kept it in his wallet for the next 4 years. Officer Rita Dawson's report was cited in a city council proposal to establish mandatory body camera requirements for all private security personnel operating in retail environments. The proposal passed 7-2. 3 neighboring cities adopted similar measures within the year. And the video, Natalie Cole's shaky, raw, unedited live stream, continued to circulate. It was shown in university ethics courses. It was referenced in 2 congressional hearings on retail discrimination. It was translated into 14 languages. 12 million views became 20. 20 became 35. Every single one of those views began the same way. A guard in a dark navy uniform, grinning, pressing his knee into the back of an old man in a black jacket who had done nothing wrong. 6 months later, Benjamin Fletcher stood at the front of a training room on the 4th floor of Morrison's corporate headquarters. The room held 42 people, newly hired security staff from 12 locations across the Southeast. They sat in folding chairs with notebooks open and pens ready. Most of them were young. Most of them were nervous. All of them knew who he was. Benjamin wore the same black jacket. The tear at the right sleeve had been stitched closed, not by a tailor, but by his own hand, the same scarred hands that had once held a federal badge and now held a dry erase marker. He did not open with a lecture. He did not quote statistics or policy manuals. He told them a story. He told them about a Tuesday afternoon, about a box of 64 crayons and a sketchbook with a lavender cover, about a granddaughter named Lily who liked the color purple, about walking toward a register and never reaching it. He told them about the cold tile against his cheek, about the knee on his back, about lying on a marble floor, surrounded by scattered crayons, while strangers recorded him on their phones, and not one person said stop. He did not raise his voice. He did not point fingers. He spoke the way he had always spoken, calmly, precisely, the way a man speaks when he knows the truth does not need volume to be heard. When he finished, the room was quiet. Not the polite quiet of a training session winding down, the kind of quiet that means something has landed and will not leave. A young man in the second row, white, 23, fresh out of community college, raised his hand. "Mr. Fletcher, how do you not hate us for what happened?" Benjamin looked at him for a long moment. "Hate is heavy," he said. "I carried a badge for 30 years. I carried a weapon. I carried case files and warrants and the weight of other people's worst days. I'm 68 years old. I'm tired of carrying things." He paused. "But accountability? That weighs nothing. And it changes everything." The young man nodded. He wrote something in his notebook. He underlined it twice. After the session, Benjamin walked to his car in the parking lot. The afternoon sun was warm on his face. His phone buzzed, a photo from his daughter. Lily, sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by drawings. Crayon shavings everywhere. Purple dominated every page. One drawing showed a tall figure in a black jacket standing in front of a crowd. The figure was smiling. Above his head, in wobbly 9-year-old handwriting, Lily had written, "My grandpa is brave." Benjamin looked at the drawing for a long time. Then he put his phone in his pocket, started the car, and drove home. Natalie Cole never went back to lifestyle content. She became an investigative reporter. Her first published series, a 6-part expose on racial profiling in American retail, won a regional press award. She dedicated it to the man in the black jacket who didn't fight back and didn't have to. If you've ever been judged before someone knew your name, before they saw your badge, your degree, your story, drop it in the comments. Your experience matters, and someone watching right now needs to hear it. Share this video with someone who needs to see it, and if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. Hit that button so you never miss another story like this one.
Derek Hartley lost his job, his security license, and now carries a debt that followed him for years. Benjamin Fletcher, he walked back to Register 3, the one he was heading to the entire time, and bought those crayons. But here's what gets me. Benjamin didn't yell, didn't swing, didn't pull rank. 30 years as a federal marshal, knee grinding into his back over a $14 box of crayons. And he just lay there, cut a ceiling tile, waited, because he understood something Derek never will. The truth doesn't need volume. It just needs time. And when someone asked him, "How do you not hate us?" he said, "Hate is heavy. I'm 68. I'm tired of carrying things. But accountability weighs nothing, and it changes everything. Let that sit. Now be real with me. Have you ever walked into a store and felt eyes on you before you touched anything? That feeling where somebody already decided who you are before you said a word. 35 million people watching that video. Most of them weren't surprised. They were just finally seen. If this hit you, share it, not for the algorithm, for somebody who needs it. Drop the story in the comments. Subscribe if you haven't. And remember, you don't have to fight back to stand tall. Sometimes